You're standing in your kitchen at 7 in the evening, trying to decide what to do about dinner. There's food in the fridge, there's pasta in the cabinet, there's half an onion, some garlic, a can of tomatoes, a hunk of Parmesan you bought 2 weeks ago. You have, sitting right there, everything you need to make a genuinely good meal in about 20 minutes. You know this, and yet your thumb is already opening the delivery app. You're tired. The app is easy. The food in the fridge requires the smallest amount of effort, and the app requires none. $26 later, plus fees, plus tip, you've ordered something that will arrive in 40 minutes, coldish, and the onion and the garlic and the tomatoes will sit in the fridge for another 3 days until they go bad and you throw them out. There's a grandmother in a small town in Italy who would not understand a single part of what just happened. Not the throwing out of food, not the paying of a stranger to bring you a worse version of a meal you could have made. Not the idea that being tired is a reason to spend money instead of a reason to cook something simple. To her, what you just did wouldn't look like convenience. It would look like a series of small betrayals of your own future, each one disguised as a normal Tuesday. That gap between how she sees money and how most Americans see money is worth examining closely, because Italian households, particularly the older generation, the nonni and the people who raised them, have historically done something the rest of the developed world struggles to do. They build wealth quietly, without drama, without high incomes, without sophisticated financial products, often without ever thinking of themselves as people who are building wealth at all. Italy has one of the lowest household debt levels in the entire wealthy world. Italian households have historically saved at rates that would shock the average American, and they did it through a set of cultural rules so deeply ingrained that nobody who follows them would even call them rules. They'd just call it living correctly. Today I'm going to walk you through 12 of those old-school Italian money rules and translate each one into what it actually means for an American trying to build wealth in 2026. None of these require a high income. None of them require investing knowledge. All of them are habits, postures, ways of relating to money, and every single one of them produces wealth as a side effect rather than a goal. Quick disclaimer before we start. None of this is financial advice. This is education about a cultural pattern. Use it as a map, not a prescription. Let's get into it. Rule 1. La casa is the foundation, and you do not overextend for it. In Italian culture, the home is sacred. It's the family patrimony, the thing passed down across generations, the safe form of wealth, the symbol of stability and adulthood. Italy has one of the highest home ownership rates in Europe, well above the rates in Germany or much of Northern Europe. But here's the part that matters. Italians historically achieved this high home ownership not by stretching for the biggest possible house, but by buying modestly, often with significant family help, and then never leveraging the home into oblivion. Mortgage debt in Italy has historically remained small compared to other European countries. The home was something you owned, fully, eventually, and then it became a foundation rather than a liability. Translate that to America in 2026. The Atlanta Fed's Housing Ownership Affordability Monitor shows that owning a median-priced home now consumes roughly 48% of the median household's income, nearly half of every dollar. The American instinct, encouraged by the entire mortgage industry, is to buy the maximum house the bank will approve. The Italian rule is the opposite. Buy the house you can comfortably afford, the one that leaves margin in your monthly budget for everything else, and treat the goal as eventual full ownership rather than perpetual leverage. The difference between buying at the bank's maximum and buying at 70% of the bank's maximum is often $1,500 to $2,000 a month. $2,000 a month invested at 8% over 25 years compounds to roughly $1,800,000. The Italian grandmother's modest house, in American terms, is worth nearly $2 million in foregone wealth that the over-leveraged buyer will never see. The home as foundation builds wealth. The home as status symbol destroys it. Rule 2. Debt is shameful, and you avoid it almost entirely. This is perhaps the deepest cultural difference. In traditional Italian financial culture, carrying debt, particularly consumer debt, is not normal. It's not a tool. It's not something everyone does. It's a source of genuine discomfort and even shame. Italy maintains one of the lowest household indebtedness levels recorded in the wealthy world. The traditional Italian household didn't finance the furniture. It didn't carry a balance on anything. It didn't normalize the idea of owing money to strangers for the privilege of having things sooner. If you couldn't afford it, you didn't have it yet. Simple. Now look at America in 2026. According to LendingTree data through the first quarter of 2026, the average credit card APR across all cards is 21%. Per Bankrate's 2026 credit card debt report, 47% of credit card holders carry a balance month to month, and 61% of those have been in debt for at least a year, up from 53% in late 2024. Total U.S. credit card debt has crossed $1.3 trillion. The American financial culture has normalized something the traditional Italian financial culture treats as a small emergency. The Italian rule isn't complicated. Don't carry consumer debt. Treat it as the genuine problem it is, not as a normal background condition of adult life. A household carrying $6,500 at 22% interest pays roughly $1,500 a year just in interest, money that produces nothing, builds nothing, and would have compounded into real wealth if it had gone anywhere else. The Italian discomfort with debt isn't old-fashioned. It's mathematically correct. Rule 3. You save first, automatically, because that's simply what responsible people do. Italian households have historically saved at rates that would make the average American uncomfortable. According to the Intesa Sanpaolo Italian Savings Survey, the average percentage of income saved by Italian savers ran around 12.6%, and the share of households that managed to save sat near 55%. The Italian gross savings rate has at times been measured around 25% at the national level. But here's the cultural part. For roughly a third of Italian savers, the saving is described as broadly precautionary, without any specific intention. They're not saving for a particular thing. They're saving because saving is what you do. It's a posture, not a project. It's automatic in the deepest sense, automatic in the mind before it's ever automatic in a bank transfer. Translate to America in 2026. Vanguard's How America Saves report finds the average employee 401k contribution rate hovers around 7.7%, with the median significantly lower. The American instinct is to save what's left over, which is usually nothing. The Italian rule inverts it. The saving happens first, as a non-negotiable expression of being a responsible person, and the spending happens with whatever remains. The mechanism in modern terms is the automatic transfer on payday, before you see the money, before lifestyle can consume it. But the deeper lesson is the posture underneath the mechanism. The Italian saver doesn't agonize over whether to save this month. The question doesn't arise. Saving is simply what's done. $500 a month moved automatically at 8% over 30 years compounds to roughly $745,000. The posture produces the wealth. The wealth was never the point. Rule 4. You eat at home and you eat well, and this is not a sacrifice. Here's where the Italian rule completely dismantles the American framing. In American financial advice, eating at home is presented as deprivation, something you do to save money, a sacrifice you make. In Italian culture, eating at home is not a sacrifice. It's the entire point. It's where the pleasure is. The home-cooked meal isn't the cheap option you settle for. It's the good option, the one you'd choose even if money were no concern, because the food is better, the experience is better, the ritual is better. The Sunday meal with extended family is one of the most cherished traditions in the entire culture. Nobody experiences cooking dinner as a financial hardship. They experience it as living correctly. Now the American math. According to research compiled for 2026, the convenience economy has normalized spending $15 to $30 per person on meals that could cost $3 to $5 at home. Someone ordering delivery or eating out 4 times a week at a $20 premium per occasion, just the premium, is spending roughly $4,000 a year on the convenience of not cooking. $4,000 a year invested at 8% over 25 years compounds to roughly $293,000. But the Italian rule doesn't frame this as $4,000 of savings. It frames it as $4,000 you were never supposed to spend in the first place, because the home meal was always the better meal. The wealth accumulates as a side effect of simply preferring the thing that was already better. That reframe is the entire genius of it. When the frugal choice is also the preferred choice, frugality stops requiring willpower. Let me pause here because the pattern across these first 4 rules is already visible. The Italian approach doesn't treat wealth building as a discipline you impose on yourself against your natural desires. It treats it as the natural result of a correctly ordered life. The modest house is just the sensible house. The avoidance of debt is just the dignified way to live. The saving is just what responsible people do. The home meal is just the better meal. In every case, the wealth is a byproduct of the values, not a goal pursued through sacrifice. This is why it works without trying. The trying was never the mechanism. The values were. Rule 5. Quality over quantity, and you buy things to last. The Italian relationship with possessions is built around durability and craftsmanship. You buy fewer things, you buy better things, and you keep them for decades. The well-made leather shoes that get resold instead of replaced. The solid wood furniture that gets passed down. The good coat that lasts 20 years. The kitchen tools your mother used and her mother before her. This isn't about luxury for its own sake. It's about the understanding that the cheap thing bought repeatedly costs more than the good thing bought once. The American math here is brutal, and we've covered versions of it before. A $38 pair of shoes that fails in 6 months, bought repeatedly, costs more across 2 years than the $85 pair that lasts 3 years. A $600 refrigerator that lasts 7 years costs more across 2 decades than the $1,500 one that lasts 17. According to research from earth.org, the average American throws away roughly 82 pounds of clothing per year, most of it cheap fast fashion that failed within months. The Italian rule, cost per use across the full lifespan rather than price at the register, isn't sophisticated financial theory. It's the inherited common sense of a culture that watched cheap things fail and good things endure for generations. Buy once, buy well, keep it for 30 years. The savings compound silently while you simply own better things. Rule 6. The familia pools resources and nobody is left to fail alone. Multi-generational living and intra-family financial support are deeply embedded in Italian culture. Adult children often live at home longer. Parents contribute to children's living costs, sometimes buy land or a home for them. The extended family lives within walking distance or a short drive. Financial support flows across generations as a normal feature of family life. The Pew Research Center has found that people in multi-generational households in America are less likely to live in poverty, partly because these households often have more earners and provide a safety net when someone loses a job. In American culture, the instinct is the opposite. Independence is prized to the point that accepting family help feels like failure, and offering it feels like interference. The Italian rule says something different. The family is a financial unit, not just an emotional one. Resources pool, costs get shared. The young adult who stays home an extra few years isn't failing to launch. They're accumulating the capital that will let them launch from a position of strength rather than fragility. The grandmother who lives with the family isn't a burden. She's childcare, wisdom, a third set of hands, and often a contributor to the household economy. In 2026 America, with housing consuming 48% of median income, the family that pools resources for a few strategic years can produce down payments, debt payoffs, and emergency funds that the isolated nuclear household simply cannot. The Italian rule treats the family as the wealth-building entity. The American instinct to do everything alone is, in pure financial terms, often the more expensive path. Rule 7. You hold tangible, safe assets and you don't gamble. Traditional Italian financial culture has historically been conservative with money. Italian households have shown strong preferences for safe assets. The stock market has historically been viewed with suspicion. Only a small percentage of Italian savers actively trade equities. Instead, the traditional preferences run toward homeownership, government bonds, and tangible safe haven assets. Gold, in particular, has a deep cultural place. Surveys have found that gold interests roughly a quarter of Italian savers. The instinct is toward what's solid, what's understood, what doesn't evaporate in a panic. Now, the American translation requires some nuance, and this is where I have to be careful. The Italian historical underexposure to equities has actually cost Italian households some long-term returns because the stock market, broadly and over decades, has been one of the great wealth builders. So the American rule isn't to avoid the stock market the way some traditional Italian savers did. The rule to extract is the underlying principle. Don't gamble. Don't chase. Don't speculate on the exciting thing. The Italian conservative instinct, applied correctly to American tools, means owning broad, boring, diversified index funds and holding them for decades rather than trading individual stocks or chasing crypto or speculating on whatever the timeline is excited about this month. The S&P 500 has produced an average annual return of roughly 10% over the long run. The Italian posture of solid, understood, long-term, not gambling is exactly the right posture for capturing that. Apply the conservative instinct to the right vehicle and it becomes extraordinarily powerful. The gambling instinct, by contrast, separates people from money with remarkable consistency. Rule 8. You don't perform wealth because that would be vulgar. There is a deep cultural understanding in traditional Italian life that genuine quality whispers and that loud displays of money are a sign of insecurity rather than security. The well-dressed Italian is dressed well, not dressed loudly. The clothing fits, the materials are good, the construction is excellent, and there is no logo screaming the price across a room. Real wealth, in this cultural frame, is understated by design. The person who needs everyone to know they have money is, in this view, telling on themselves. This maps directly onto American reality in 2026. We've covered the data before. The visible logo luxury goods, the leased badge cars, the performed prosperity. These are increasingly recognized as signals of aspiration rather than arrival. The Ramsey National Study of Millionaires found that the median price millionaires pay for their cars is around $31,000, and the top brands they drive are Toyota, Honda, and Ford. The actually wealthy, in America as in Italy, tend toward the understated. The Italian rule, don't perform wealth, isn't just about taste. It's financially load-bearing. Every dollar spent broadcasting wealth to strangers is a dollar that can't compound into actual wealth. The performance is expensive and produces nothing. The Italian instinct toward quiet quality routes that same money toward things that last and accounts that grow. Vulgarity, in the Italian sense, is also just bad math. Rule 9. You waste nothing, and you find this satisfying rather than burdensome. The traditional Italian kitchen is built around the principle that nothing goes to waste. Stale bread becomes ribollita or panzanella. Vegetable scraps become stock. The Sunday roast becomes Monday's sandwich and Tuesday's sauce. This isn't poverty behavior, it's craft. It's the satisfaction of using everything well, of treating ingredients with the respect they deserve, of finding the resourceful solution pleasurable in itself. The cucina povera tradition, the cooking of the poor, produced some of the most beloved dishes in the entire cuisine precisely because constraint bred creativity and nothing was thrown away. The American contrast is stark. According to USDA data, Americans waste 30 to 40% of the food supply. The average family of 4 throws away roughly $1,500 worth of food per year directly into the garbage. The Italian rule reframes waste reduction entirely. It's not a chore. It's not deprivation. It's the satisfying practice of using what you have well. $1,500 a year, the cost of average American food waste, invested at 8% over 25 years compounds to roughly $110,000. But the Italian wouldn't experience the savings as the reward. The Italian would experience the resourcefulness itself as the reward, and the $110,000 would simply accumulate quietly in the background as a consequence of doing the kitchen correctly. When the frugal practice is genuinely satisfying, it sustains itself for life. Rule 10. You teach children about money through participation, not lectures. In traditional Italian family life, children learn money by being inside the family economy rather than by being taught abstract lessons about it. They're in the kitchen, watching the meal get made from inexpensive ingredients. They're at the market watching the careful selection of what's in season and well-priced. They're present for the family conversations about the home, the work, the resources. They absorb the relationship with money by osmosis through participation in a household that runs on certain principles. Nobody sits them down for a lecture on compound interest. They simply grow up inside a financial culture and inherit it. The American translation matters here because financial literacy is one of the great gaps in American life. Most American children learn money from a culture of consumption, from advertising, from the normalized debt around them, from watching parents who themselves were never taught. The Italian rule says the transmission happens through participation and example, not instruction. Children who grow up watching resourcefulness, watching saving treated as normal, watching debt treated as something to avoid, watching quality valued over quantity, inherit those postures the way they inherit a language. The Millionaire Next Door research found a striking pattern. Adult children who received large amounts of financial support from parents tended to accumulate less wealth themselves, while children raised inside a culture of financial discipline tended to reproduce it. The Italian rule isn't to hand children money. It's to raise them inside the correct financial culture so the culture becomes theirs. Rule 11. You think in generations, not in years. This is perhaps the most powerful Italian money rule and the hardest one for American culture to absorb. The traditional Italian relationship with wealth is multi-generational by default. The home isn't bought for you, it's bought for the family line. The decisions are made with grandchildren in mind, with the idea that what you build doesn't end with you. Inheritance, succession, the passing down of the patrimony, these aren't morbid afterthoughts. They're the organizing principle. You are a steward of something that existed before you and will continue after you. American financial culture, by contrast, tends to think in much shorter horizons. The quarterly statement, the annual bonus, the retirement date. The Italian rule stretches the horizon dramatically, and a stretched horizon changes every decision. When you think in generations, the over-leveraged house looks insane because you're not just risking your own stability, you're risking the foundation of the family line. When you think in generations, the consumer debt looks worse because you're not just borrowing from your future self, you're borrowing from your descendants. When you think in generations, the index fund held for 40 years isn't a long time. It's a reasonable down payment on a 100-year project. The single greatest force in wealth building is compound interest, and compound interest rewards time more than almost anything else. The Italian generational mindset is, in pure financial terms, the mindset that gives compound interest the longest possible runway. Thinking in generations isn't sentimental. It's the time horizon that the math most rewards. Rule 12. Contentment is the final discipline, and you practice it deliberately. Underneath all 11 previous rules sits this one, and it's the engine that makes the rest sustainable. Traditional Italian culture carries a deep strain of contentment, of finding the good life in things that aren't for sale, the long meal with people you love, the walk through the town in the evening, the passeggiata, the pleasure of good, simple food, good conversation, good weather, the company of family. The life worth living in this cultural frame is not a life of acquisition. It's a life of presence. And when the good life is located in things that don't cost money, the entire engine of overconsumption loses its grip on you. This is the rule that everything else depends on, and it's the hardest one for American culture to absorb because American culture is, to a significant degree, an engine for manufacturing discontent. The advertising, the social media, the constant visibility of what others have, all of it is designed to keep you feeling that you don't have enough yet. According to consumer research, 61% of American shoppers engage in retail therapy to improve their mood, and the average American makes nearly 10 impulse purchases a month. The Italian rule of deliberate contentment is the direct antidote. When you have genuinely internalized that the good life is the meal and the walk and the people, the marketing bounces off you. The impulse purchase loses its appeal because it was always trying to fill a void that contentment has already filled. And here's the wealth consequence. The contented person saves enormous amounts of money without experiencing it as restriction, because they were never going to spend it anyway. Contentment isn't just a nicer way to live. It's the psychological foundation that makes every other money rule effortless. Without it, the other 11 rules require willpower. With it, they require nothing at all. They just become how you live. Let me step back now and tell you what connects all 12 of these rules, because the connection is the entire lesson. None of them are financial techniques, not one. They're not budgeting methods or investment strategies or tax optimizations. They're a worldview, a way of relating to money, to possessions, to family, to time, to satisfaction itself. And the wealth that this worldview produces is genuinely accidental. The Italian grandmother who followed these rules her whole life was not trying to build wealth. She was trying to live correctly. The wealth was a side effect of correctness. That's why the title of this says, Wealth Without Trying. The trying was never the mechanism. The worldview was, and the worldview produced the wealth quietly, automatically, almost invisibly, while the person who held it was simply busy living a life they considered good. This is the deepest possible contrast with American financial culture, which tends to treat wealth building as a project, a discipline, a thing you do, separate from and often opposed to the life you actually want to live. The American frame says, sacrifice now, deprive yourself now, grind now, so that someday you can live. The Italian frame says, live correctly now, and the wealth accumulates as a consequence of the correctness. One of these is sustainable for a lifetime. The other one isn't, which is why most American financial discipline collapses within months. You cannot white-knuckle your way through 40 years, but you can absolutely live inside a worldview for 40 years, because a worldview doesn't require effort. It just requires being who you are. Now, I want to be honest about something because it matters. Italy in 2026 is not a financial utopia. The country has real economic challenges. Youth unemployment has been a persistent problem. The intergenerational transmission of homeownership has been faltering since the global financial crisis. Younger Italians face labor market insecurity that their grandparents didn't. The traditional Italian underexposure to equities has genuinely cost Italian households long-term returns. So I'm not telling you that Italy has it all figured out. I'm telling you that the old-school household rules, the nonna rules, the ones that built the famously low household debt and the famously high household savings, contain something genuinely valuable. And that value survives translation into American tools and American conditions. Take the worldview. Apply it to the S&P 500 index fund, the Roth IRA, the high-yield savings account, the modest American house. The combination of the Italian posture and the American tools is, frankly, close to unbeatable. If you watch this and recognize that your relationship with money is the American project model rather than the Italian worldview model, that you're grinding and depriving and white-knuckling rather than simply living inside a set of values that produces wealth as a side effect, the shift starts with seeing your actual situation clearly. You can't reorganize a financial life you can't see. I built a digital product called the Financial Reset System for exactly that first step. It walks you through getting clear on your real numbers, finding where your money is actually leaking, sequencing your priorities the way a correctly ordered financial life sequences them, essentials first, stability next, growth after, and building a 30-day plan that turns the clarity into structure. Every number auto-calculates as you fill it in. The PDF guide walks you through each step. The 30-day plan gives you weekly checkpoints. The link is in the description and in my profile if you want to take a look. The Italian worldview is the destination. Getting clear on your real numbers is how you start walking toward it. Here's the closing thought worth carrying with you. The Italian grandmother in that small town never read a personal finance book. She never watched a video about compound interest. She never optimized a portfolio or calculated a cost per use ratio or set up an automatic transfer. And yet, by the standards of the wealthy world, she did almost everything right. Low debt, high savings, a paid-off home, quality possessions that lasted decades, a family that pooled resources, a life of contentment that immunized her against the entire machinery of overconsumption. She built wealth without trying because she wasn't trying to build wealth. She was trying to live correctly. And in her culture, living correctly and building wealth turned out to be the same activity wearing two different names. That's the gift hidden inside these 12 rules. They collapse the false distinction between living well and building wealth. American financial culture treats those as opposites, as a trade-off, as a war between the present and the future. The Italian rules treat them as identical. The modest house is both the wealthy choice and the peaceful choice. The home meal is both the frugal choice and the better choice. The avoidance of debt is both the smart choice and the dignified choice. The contentment is both the financial foundation and simply the good life. When wealth building and good living point in the same direction, you no longer need discipline. You just need to be the kind of person who lives that way. And then time and compound interest do the rest, while you're busy enjoying dinner. You don't have to be Italian to live by these rules. You just have to decide that the life worth living and the life that builds wealth were never actually in conflict, and that almost everything in modern American consumer culture has been quietly lying to you about that. The food is already in your fridge. The good meal is 20 minutes away. The delivery app was never the convenient choice. It was just the choice that cost you your future, $26 at a time, while telling you it was doing you a favor. The nonna would have made the pasta, and 40 years later, the math would have proven her right.